Prior to your session, the classroom computer will be sitting in a virtual queue waiting for you to connect. When you click on Start Tutoring, your computer joins the classroom computer in the virtual queue. Unlike screen sharing, your computer and the classroom computer are independent, even though they display the same material. As the tutor, you control the session and decide what activities to show to your student. The first step to getting started with the activities will be to select your student's reading level. This is done for both flashcards and stories. Reading levels are set by the teacher and will be listed above the reading level buttons. If the teacher doesn't move the student's reading level after a 30-day period, the system will prompt you to move the student to the next reading level. If you find the material is too difficult for your student, you can always move them back to the previous reading level and then try advancing them again the following week. As you work with your pupil, keep in mind that rewarding their success is an important component in building reading confidence. While verbal praise is very motivating and should be given often, we also provide several high five pop-ups you can use to further reward your students' hard work. Let's now walk through the activities in the tutoring application, demonstrating how you and your pupil will see them during a real session. The first activity in the sequence is Flashcards. Flashcards has two functions. It gives students an opportunity to practice sight words, and it tests students' knowledge of words that follow similar patterns. Both are learned skills that will help increase reading proficiency. Spend 5 minutes at the beginning of your session on flashcards. Once your student is reading at level orange, you can skip the flashcard activity and focus more time on reading. When you click on a word, your student will see the same word on their screen. Each time your student gets a word correct, mark the word green by clicking on the green button. If your student struggles with a word or gives an incorrect response, mark the card red by clicking on the red button. Your student will only see the words you show them and will not see the words you have colour-coded in green or in red. To confirm your student has received the flashcard you sent, watch for the Sending To and Received By prompt. This feature is available for every activity and will help you gauge when the student can see the material you sent. The next activity in the series is Stories. Reading stories out loud is the most important thing your student will do, as it's where he or she gets a chance to practice. You should ideally spend 15 to 20 minutes of your session each week reading stories, but each child will be different. When you're ready to read stories, click on the story icon from the activity menu, select the appropriate reading level and click Continue to open the story library. A library of levelled books will be displayed on both your screen and on the student's screen. The student will tell you which book he or she would like to read by giving you the number next to the book title or describing the picture. You will select that story and your student can begin reading. Depending on what level your student is reading at, there are 3 types of stories to choose from: primary stories, controlled text stories, and science stories. Controlled text stories appear at the lower reading levels and contain words that the child should know at this reading level using phonic patterns that they've already been taught. For unconfident readers, this may be a good place to start, as the text is simple. When reading controlled text stories, we want students to practice reading with fluency. In other words, can the student read without having to stop and sound out a word? Can they read the text accurately and with expression? Primary stories use both words that students should know and also those that they're learning in Year 1. By reading these stories, students are increasing their word knowledge and practicing newly learned words. Once you feel your student has mastered a level of primary stories, it may be time to test their fluency skills using the controlled text stories, which appear at higher levels. Science stories are presented in later levels. These are very engaging texts that introduce science-related content about the Earth, space exploration, and chemistry. Let's take a look at a typical story and make sure it's clear what you do and what your pupil will see. When you choose a story from the library, the child will see page 1 of that story on their screen. While you can advance the stories forward using the arrow keys, your pupil will not have that option and can only see the page number. You might decide to look through or walk through the whole book with your pupil before reading it. You can mention some of the key words and give them a sense of the story before they read it, which can boost the confidence of early or reluctant readers. Do remember to use the pictures in each story too. When you start to read each page, you can help your pupil prepare to read by asking them to look at the picture and describe what they think the story is about. As you read, you may want your student to focus on a particular word. You can do this in two ways. First, you can click on a word on your screen, which will highlight the word on the child's view of the page, or you can show that word to your student by typing in the message box. For example, if your student is struggling with the word park, you can type the word or its individual letters into the message student box and send that word to your student. Remind them to sound it out using their phonics. When you send the word to your pupil in this way, it will appear for them as if spoken by a small owl in the top left of the screen. Asking them what the owl is saying is a good way to check they can see the word you've sent. Asking questions about the story is a good way to see if your student is able to remember key points of the story. Can the student tell you about the story in their own words, or make connections between the story and their own experiences? Not all stories include comprehension questions, but feel free to spend time asking your student about the story when you're finished reading. If a story does include comprehension questions, they will be presented on your screen at the end of the story. The pupil's screen will display pictures to help them remember what the story is about. In addition to providing stories for practicing reading and fluency skills, we also provide students with word games designed to build their knowledge of words and word parts. You can fit these in between stories to break up reading or offer children a chance to do them before you say goodbye for the week. Feel free to experiment. There are 3 word activities to choose from. What follows is a brief look at each game. To view step-by-step instructions, click on the Directions link at the top of each page. In the word sort activity, students will practice sorting words based on their word endings. This is great practice for students learning how to sound out words. As the tutor, you will select the word from a list of 9 words you'll see above the coloured boxes. Your student will see the same word on their screen, but will only see one word, not the menu that you have. Ask your student where the word belongs based on the word ending. Once you click on the appropriate box, the word will populate and the student will see the same word on their screen. Once all the words have been placed in a box, draw your student's attention to the similarities of the words. Then ask your student to read the words in each box. 3 in a row is a favourite activity for many students. This additional exposure to words will help encourage fluent reading and word identification. When you're ready to begin, determine who will be a cross and who will be a nought. Notice each box has a word. Your pupil can see the same words as you. Taking turns, you and your student will try to be the first to get 3 crosses or noughts in a row up, down, across or diagonally. When you place a cross or a nought in the box, your student will see the same thing on their screen. Mystery word is a fun way of learning vocabulary and will help students remember the spelling of new words. To begin, think of a word or use one of the suggested words found on the right side of your screen. The student cannot see these words. When you have a word in mind, click on the number of letters of the word. Your student will see the same number of blank spaces on their screen. As your student begins to guess letters, click on the letter on the keyboard. This will highlight that letter for both you and your student. Place your cursor on the appropriate line and select the letter using your computer keyboard. Your student will see each letter on their screen. You may find your student needs a little help getting started with this activity. Consider filling in the first letter or offering a clue to help your student guess the word. The whiteboard simulates a magnetic board and is great for practicing spelling, difficult words, or making up fun sentences. Type a word or phrase in the field at the bottom of the screen. When you click Submit Word, your student will see the same word or phrase on their screen. You can also move words and phrases around by dragging anywhere on the board. Why not make up a story together each week? While it may be tempting to spend more time with your student, please end your session promptly at the end of 30 minutes. There may be another tutor scheduled immediately after your session, and the system only allows for one tutoring session to be running at a time. To disengage from the session, click on End Session from the menu or click the red End link at the top of the page. You will be redirected to the home page and can log out of the application.